YouTube. Welcome back to my channel, YouTube. If y'all are new here, my name is Angel. If y'all are not new, then of course, welcome back. As y'all can see, I'm not on camera today. That's a little bit different, y'all, but I feel like y'all don't need to see me, right? I feel like the message will be quite clear without camera, right? So today we are getting into matriarchy and goddess worship from the perspective of a male devotee, right? Um, I feel like I have spent a lot of time speaking about matriarchy and goddess worship. I have spent a lot of time speaking about the toxicity within the patriarchy, specifically as it pertains to theology, right? So, how the Abrahamic religions have spread patriarchy through civilizations of antiquity, right? And one thing that's kind of frustrating me about that is even with all of the facts that I've presented, even with all of the unbiased sources that I've presented, people still tend to reject the message from me because I'm a woman. And it automatically gets chalked up as, oh, well, you're a feminist. And, you're just a woman that's trying to take a man's place and blah, 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 da, 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 right? Amongst other things. So I wanted to get the perspective of a man who identifies as a goddess worshiper and who is subservient to the matriarchy, right? And today we have Mr. Anthony with us. Would you like to introduce yourself to the people? Tell them a little bit about you.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? This is Anthony, and I've been on this path for a while now, about 10 years, just studying and researching, and just doing all I can to, advance this cause of matriarchy and goddess worship, polyandry as well.
Alrighty, and that's something else we can get into. That's important. So, um, most of us have come from patriarchal backgrounds, right? Traditional households. Was that the case for you?
Well, I was raised with a single mother, so it was very much matriarchal, but patriarchal beliefs were still in the actual home as well. So it was matriarchal, but there was still patriarchal teachings and beliefs, and I was indoctrinated into a patriarchal religion as well. So it was kind of strange though, yeah,
And
because
boom,
things
I'm
kind
sorry.
of because things kind of ran pretty smoothly as a matriarchy, but it was something that was in the absence of patriarchy. It was still being held as something that was the standard and the highest standard, even though everything was matriarchal.
I love that you shed light on that situation because that's another response that I get all the time from men who are against the matriarchy is that, oh, well, we've been living in the matriarchy for years. Look at the single mother homes. Look at blah, 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 right? And people fail to realize that just because a woman is the only figure in the home does not mean that it's matriarchal in the sense of, first of all, if we look at what a matriarchy is, it's a governmental body in which positions of power are mostly held by women, right? So even if our household has a strong mother figure, our government, meaning our laws, our regulations, our standards are all dictated by majority men, Caucasian men to be specific, right? And then, like you said, even in these matriarchal households, Abrahamic religions are by far the most widely accepted and pushed belief system in the nation, right? So most single mothers subscribe to Christianity, Islam, Catholicism, right? So they're still pushing patriarchal rhetoric and doctrine, right? Um, so I wanted to ask you, right? How coming from that background, how did you make the transition into true matriarchy, right? What inspired that change?
I mean, that's a really good question. So you're absolutely right. We were raised under a matriarchal home, or many of us are, but there's still patriarchal brainwashing, So even though we see things going, pretty smoothly in a single mother matriarchal home, the patriarchal brainwashing is that, that this is not the most natural function. The most natural function is to have, the man as the leader and things like that. And it was also the same thing with church as well. If there was a woman pastor or woman minister that was leading the church, it was an absence because there was no man or they couldn't find a man. So it
Mm.
was always, so patriarchy was always set to this highest type of standard. So I mean, so being around women, very strong women that was naturally matriarchal. As I just grew older, I just kind of felt like this was the correct path. That this was the path that we should dive into with society, and it's a kind of instinctual thing with me, a primordial feeling within me that this is the true way, is matriarchy, and not patriarchy. So I just did a lot of comparisons, where households that was patriarchal tend to be, most of them tend to be abusive or oppressive, and households that was more matriarchal was a little bit more cooperative, and there was more love and empathy and things like that. So yeah, I would just say that it was something that was just very natural for me to just to accept matriarchy. Of course, I had to delete a lot of the brainwashing of patriarchy, and that was a bit of a struggle in the beginning. Just like, you know, especially being a Christian and things like that, and seeing what the Bible says about patriarchy and things like that. So that was the hardest part, was in my heart knowing that matriarchy was the true way, but in my head, in my brain, all of this type of indoctrination that is teaching me that patriarchy is what's supposed to be. So yeah.
I feel like there's so many like good points to kind of hit on right there. Like firstly, the point of why. So this is the thing that I've noticed continuously, right? A lot of men who say things like the black woman is God, right? They still have patriarchal viewpoints that they're fighting or holding on to, right? I've seen men say things like, well, the woman is the closest to divinity, right? The creator is feminine, but she gave birth to masculine energy to be the structure and the order. So once the man was born, he became the leader. Um, kind of trying to insinuate that women created men or the goddess created men to rule over women. And to me, that's like a major contradiction, right? To me, that's an example of someone who is holding on to that power and authority that the patriarchy grants, but doing it under the guise of matriarchy, right? So I wanted to ask you, as someone who has completely submitted to the matriarchy, right? Why? Right? Like what I can see how as a man it could be empowering. It could be inspiring to want to hold on to your position of authority. It could be very easy to do that. So what in you said, you know what? I don't want this authority. I don't want this superiority. I would like to relinquish that to the woman. And was that a difficult journey for you?
Yeah, really, really good points. So yeah, that was a difficult journey in the beginning. I do feel like the man is the leader of the household, but he's the leader as far as being a protector and a provider. But the woman, she is a spiritual leader. So she's the more, she leads with her morals, with the empathy, with the spirituality. So basically, the person who's supposed to be the head of the household is the woman, because she's going to be able to lead the family in a way that's going to be much more righteously. So but to give that position to a man who's supposed to be a provider and a protector, and now you're making him a spiritual leader as well. Most often than not, most much more often than not, he becomes corrupt. Things just kind of becomes unbalanced at that particular point, and that's exactly what I've witnessed in within many households and things like that. So it's just imbalance. You know, she's supposed to lead, and you're supposed to lead, but as a person that is subservient to the family, as a protector and a provider, if that makes sense. You know, I mean, it used to happen in even in patriarchal kingdoms, even if it was patriarchal, that king used to go to the woman, to like an oracle, or you know, or
Mm-hmm.
someone like that was highly spiritual, and seek advice. Like, when was it time for him to go to war? When was it time? You know, what was happening around the kingdom? He always sought that advice from a much more spiritual leader, like an oracle or witch or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You know, so it's like we've lost that balance, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. The man always seeking guidance from the woman, and her having the authority to be able to instruct them and lead them in that guidance. So yeah, yeah. To answer your other question, like, was it difficult? Yeah, I mean, I went through a particular cycle where it was kind of like acceptance, then it was denial, then it was basically acceptance again. And this is kind of going back and forth into that particular cycle of just like trying to figure out, you know, why am I the only one that feels like this? You know, because sometimes you do feel like you're the only one that kind of gets it, and other men who do get it, they're very silent about it. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so at that point, after that just continuous cycle, I just had to make a choice to be bold enough to speak my truth, and to know that this is the way and the truth, which is the woman being the head of the household and being the matriarch.
I love that you pointed out that even when patriarchy did exist in the past, there was still a sort of checks and balance to where the patriarchal authority figure consorted with a feminine spiritual leader, right? And I'm sure most of my viewers know that we love to speak about Asherah here. We love to speak about the Queen Mother position in Judaism. But the truth of the matter is that was the dying breaths of a practice that dated back to prehistoric times, right? And we saw the annihilation of that practice in Judaism, where Asherah was dethroned and her priestesses were labeled as prostitutes and her shrines were burned to the ground. And the women who were queen mothers, such as Solomon's mother, were demonized and belittled and stripped of their power, right? So that was that transition from men are in a position of leadership, but that leadership is backed and supported by the feminine spiritual leadership, and that's the true balance, right? And that's something similar that we do here at Manumi, is that we do believe that men can occupy positions of leadership. However, they must be ordained into that position by women, right? And they are kept in balance by a council of women, right? So that that power cannot be rampant, right, and into one masculine authority. So the reason why I like that you pointed that out is because I think a lot of people hear matriarchy and they think that it's patriarchy in reverse. And that's the problem, because patriarchy has taken leadership and painted it as this conquering, power hungry, you know, this thing to where you completely strip whatever you're leading or whoever you're leading of their autonomy, of their power, and of their divinity, right? And that is unique to patriarchy. That's not what matriarchy is. I've done my research, right? I've dug through societies of antiquity, and for the most part, when you see matriarchal societies, they're more egalitarian than tyrannical, right? So there's a natural sort of balance, like a man being in position of leadership, but women appointing him there, right? As opposed to patriarchy, where it's completely dominated by men. Women have no power. Women are the weaker vessels, right? And I think that that is where a lot of the fear comes from other men, is the fear of, oh my gosh, they're going to do to us what we've been doing to them for hundreds of years, right? It's our turn to be the bottom of the totem pole. Um, do you has that thought crossed your mind, right? Was that something that you grappled with as far as understanding the true nature of matriarchy as opposed to patriarchy?
Yeah, I mean that's a really, really good point that you touched on. You know, people do believe that matriarchy is basically like a female-led patriarchy,
Hmm.
and because it's a female-led patriarchy, then it's going to be just as oppressive, and then the men won't have any voice. You know, the men will be emasculated, things like that. So that is a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear within men that, you know, if they do, you know, submit to a matriarchal family structure, that this is what's going to happen to them. You know, now it's their turn to, like, I guess, receive the karma and be oppressed and things like that. Where a woman's nature has never been like that. A woman's nature is to cooperate. You know, she is much more closer to, you know, nature and things like that. So, you know, she wants to be able to make sure that everybody within the household or the nation is happy. So she leads as a maternal type of figure. So that's just not, you know, that's just not the personality of women. And I think we just need to give women a chance to be able to prove that, you know, that in modern days that this is the best way to do it. You know, this is the best method. You know, women tend not to lead with ego. You know, they
Hmm.
tend to lead and stuff with empathy and just having the best interest for everybody at heart, and making sure that everybody has the best voice. Now, I'm not saying, you know, all women can do that, but I do believe divine feminine women who are, you know, who do know knowledge within themselves, they're fully capable of being able to have a really successful matriarchy. So yeah.
I 100% agree. I think that there are definitely societal and biological differences between the man and the woman. I've spoken multiple times about, just our brain chemistry, the way our brain is designed, right? We experience
Hmm.
higher brain function in an area that deals with empathy, concern for others, impulse control. Um, these are things that kind of come more naturally to us. Even when we look at a societal perspective, most violent crimes, murder, rape, pillage, um, armed robbery, these things are done by men. Women don't innately seek that type of destruction of others, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there are no violent women. There are no women who are controlling or domineering. No. But if we're speaking from a general perspective, if we zoom out and look at all women and all men throughout antiquity, even, it's pretty fair to say that women are not inclined towards a violent, hostile, domineering, total possession nature, right? And so I think that that's what needs to click in our brains is that a woman moving into the position of power, when she's truly in her femininity, she is not going to behave the way that a man in a position of power will, right? So switching gears just a little bit, right?
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, so much of a man's identity in today's society is, a man is a leader, a man is the head of the household, a man is supposed to be dominant, right? Like when you ask most people what is what makes a man, these are the type of things that are going to come out their mouth, right? So as a man who has let go of these characteristics, how do you still define yourself as a man? What qualities would you say um deems you a man in light of that transition?
Really good question. So yeah, so what I define myself to be a man is basically I define myself to be a divine masculine man, someone who is humble, you know, within a matriarchal household, but is also strong. Someone who is willing to be a provider, to be a protector, be a defender of the truth. You know, someone that is that can be also understanding and empathetic and be able to encourage others to be led the right way, like encourage other brothers and build a strong brotherhood with other men who do feel the same way. So that's how I basically you know look into my masculinity. It's not about trying to dominate someone or control someone or kill someone and things like that. It's going to be in a much more divine masculine way of doing things.
I agree. I agree. I think that's another like pushback that I've gotten with this journey of matriarchy is like, oh, no man is going to protect something that doesn't belong to him. No man is going to, why should a man protect you if you won't submit to him? A lot of men, so most men agree that men are protectors and providers. It's just that they think that protection and provision is contingent upon him being in a position of authority. And if he's not in that position of authority, then the protection and the provision is null and void, right? So it's definitely refreshing to see men who are still willing to be protectors and providers without feeling as though they have to have all positions of leadership all the time, right? Um, so I did want to ask you about polyandry, right? Because I noticed that you mentioned that earlier. Do you
Yes.
care to explain polyandry to the people?
Yes, of course. So polyandry is basically a form of polygamy, and what it means is that the woman, she's the head of the household, but also she has multiple husbands as well. So and the husbands are exclusive to her, and she is able to choose to have multiple husbands, and polyandry most of the time can be female centric.
Okay. So that's definitely interesting to me. There's so many questions that I have here. So firstly, I've seen polygamy mostly be pushed as polygyny, right? So a man with multiple women. And when I have seen women say, well, I can have multiple men, there's always the same sort of rhetoric that is kind of regurgitated as a response, right? And so one of them that I noticed was, well, you can have multiple men as long as you're willing to protect and provide for all of them, right? So essentially insinuating that if a woman's going to have multiple men, then she has to switch places with a man and take on his role by protecting and providing for those women. I mean, for those men. I'm sorry. What is your perspective on that?
Really good question. So, like, as far as polyandry and polygyny have two different functions, especially when it comes to nation building. Polyandry is really designed to build the nation, to build the wealth of a particular nation or tribe. So that's why you do have multiple men, because those multiple men will be able to provide for that household or for that tribe. So then the queendom is actually being built, and the wealth of the queendom is being built with resources and everything. So that is the primary source for polyandry, and in ancient days that's exactly what they used polyandry for. If there were times of scarcity, or the household was in poverty and things like that, and instead of like sharing different lands to multiple sons, all those sons will just choose one wife, and they will have a polyandry to make sure that the land and the wealth stays within that family. So,
Mm-hmm.
so in nation building, polyandry is to build the wealth, and in polygyny is actually to expand the actual, the actual tribe. So polygyny is really best for, making sure and stuff that you do have more children, and the tribe will grow because you are able to, impregnate so many women at the same time. So it's an expansion of the empire, while polyandry is basically building the wealth of the empire. And we as a people, we're doing things so much more backwards. Like most household, in United States or Black communities, are in poverty, or very close to poverty. So it makes more sense for them to actually do a polyandry, build the wealth, and then if they want to expand it with a polygyny, they can do that. But then we're doing it backwards, where we're trying to do polygyny, And then all you're doing is basically expanding poverty because the wealth is
Mhm.
not being built. So it's just a correct way of doing it, and we just have everything just because of the culture of patriarchy, we're so willing to practice polygyny and not look into polyandry, which is really essential for nation building.
So I love that you explained it like that because I feel like that's something that I've been kind of speaking on for a very long time now is that polygyny is nonsensical in today's society, right?
Facts.
So the biggest reason that they give is like, oh, nation building, because they think that nation building means having a bunch of children, right?
Facts.
Children are a luxury. Reproducing yourself is a luxury. This is why many animals, when they're in a complex situation, when they're in a drought, when they're in a dry season, they don't even mate. Because how are you going to mate and produce offspring, but you don't have anything to feed that offspring? You don't have protection to ensure the survival of that offspring. You don't have the necessities for that offspring to flourish and thrive. Your main focus should not be reproducing as many babies as possible. We already have that issue. When we look at the society today, how many single parent homes do we have? How many children in adoption agencies do we have? How many children in foster care? How many abortions are had on a daily basis? What makes y'all think that rapidly reproducing as many children as possible is the solution and the first step that we should take towards building our own nation? We are still inside of another nation. We have zero autonomy. We have zero culture. We have zero ability to feed, clothe, water, and protect ourselves. But you think as a man, what's going to make your nation strong is to be the only man amidst a group of 10 pregnant women. That's ridiculous. And it makes no sense to me because a lot of these men will say things like, women don't build, men are the builders, men are the conquerors, men are the ones who create the society around you and technology and both. Okay, you're right. So, if the goal is to build a nation, why wouldn't you want a plethora of men to build that nation and build the resources for that nation and then create multiple children, right? What use as a man is there for you to try to build a nation from scratch and the only help that you have is a bunch of pregnant women who are not designed to do brute labor, right? To me that's nonsensical. And what I'll often notice in these polygynous situations is that the women end up taking on a masculine role. They end up taking care of that man and, you know, divvying up the expenses to foot that nation. So the women end up being the providers and the man ends up being the center and playing a more feminine role. This is how we get things like pimping, right? Where you have a man who's using women and exploiting their sexual appeal for his own personal gain. And I've noticed a lot of men within the spiritual community who practice polygyny do the same thing on a more spiritual or virtual level, right? So I'm saying all that to say that I definitely understand how, from a nation building perspective, polyandry can be more logical for the current situation that we're in. Now, there are some other discrepancies that I've noticed people bring up. So, for example, as a woman, right? One of the main concerns that people bring up is like, well, who's the child's father? And that creates a conflict because what if she gets pregnant by this guy and not by this one? And there's like this major issue with the child's paternity. Is that something that you've been concerned about? And if so, how did you overcome that concern?
No, no, not at all. Specifically to that question that you're asking, it is such a simple solution. Whenever the woman is pregnant, the polyandrous woman, she's pregnant. All of the men are the fathers of that child. All of the men are there to take care of that child. Whether one of them is biological or not. all of those men take that role as father figures and to help raise that child. So, and back in the day, the paternity was actually developed by the woman. It was passed on from the woman to the child. We never looked at paternity between the father and the child. It was always the lineage was women to children. It's called matrilineal. So
Hmm.
so that's a much more efficient way of going about it. So that part is has never been a concern whatsoever to me. So yeah, and I agree with everything that you just said 1,000%. You know, it does become something that, and we as men are supposed to be very logical and but as far as this whole polyandry thing and polygyny, you notice that men are leading from their ego and they're not even thinking about the logic,
Mm.
because it's very unlogical for you to have multiple women but there's no wealth that's being built, and then you make the women, they get pregnant, then they got to work. So when they're pregnant, they're off of their they can't work anymore. So that means there's income that's being lost, and then they're not able to take care of the children because they have to also work. So it just creates a really bad situation, and it's just unnatural, in my opinion. If you are in a polygyny, if you do want to do polygyny, the wealth has to be there first, because you do need to make sure that the children are being taken care of. If there is no wealth in the household, then polyandry is the best way to actually accumulate that wealth. So very logical, but a lot of men, because of patriarchal brainwashing, their ego gets in the way, and the ego becomes very, very fragile.
I agree. I agree. I think that, again, I'm someone, like, I've practiced polygyny before multiple times. I've spoken with so many men, so many polygynous men, and it's always ego based. But, and this is gonna get me into another topic, right? They try to portray it as logic and reasoning, but it's clear as day that it's coming from a very emotional and egotistical standpoint, right? So that was something that I've noticed as well. Is a lot of people feel like, oh well, women are emotional and men are logical. So that's why men are supposed to be the leaders. Did you see that for yourself? Like, growing up, and even now as a man who is a part of a matriarchal society, have you seen for yourself that women are emotional and illogical and men are logical and non-emotional?
I mean, I do see that women can be very chaotic and illogical and things like that, emotionally. But if a woman is a divine feminine woman, she has already done a lot of work within herself to know, when it's time to be logical, when it's time to be emotional. And a woman's emotion has always been put as something as a weakness, when in fact, in my opinion, it's a strength. Because with that emotion comes with intuition, psychic abilities. A woman has a sixth sense to know when danger is about to arrive, even when you don't know in the third dimension. So a woman should be able to lead with her emotions, and that is a power and a strength that men don't possess, because men are always, leading from logical perspective or from the mind or the brain, and that's why we have so much murders and atrocities and wars and things like that, because these leaders are always thinking logically, instead of being empathetic towards other people. And so that those emotions are a strength, because if she's empathetic towards another tribe, then she may want to be able to try to cooperate with them and come to a solution with them. So
Mhm.
that's why emotions is a strength. But if it's a man and he's looking at another tribe and he's thinking logically, all he wants to do is go into war and take their resources and destroy them. So emotion from inside of a woman is a strength, and it should be held as a strength in her leadership abilities.
I like that you pointed that out, because I feel like a lot of black men, especially, complain about the colonization and the oppression that we're subject to in this nation. but they refuse to accept that this is a result of the patriarchy, right? And that's what, oh, it's a white man. I don't care. It's still the patriarchy, right? Um, much of the oppression and the colonization and the cultural appropriation that we face is a product of that masculine leadership that says, I am linear, I am self centered, I am only concerned with what belongs to me. And what does not belong to me, I'm only concerned with making that belong to me. No matter who I have to trample over, no matter who I have to steal, rape, and pillage from, no matter who I have to destroy. And it's not always a who, right? Um, the way that the earth is pillaged and ransacked, and usurped of all of its precious minerals and oils, even when it's to our own detriment. I think that is a product of patriarchy being so focused on the logical aspect of we need oil to fuel our cars that we're completely oblivious to the oil spills that are affecting our sea life. We're completely oblivious to the thousands upon thousands of children who are being murdered due to wars over oil. We're completely oblivious to the air pollution, the light pollution, the pollution of the soil, right? All because of that logical, self centered perspective of I need oil and I don't care who or what has to perish in order for me to accomplish that goal, right? This is what empathy is for. This is what emotional intelligence, because that's what I like to make a distinction between emotional and emotional intelligence, because I've noticed that a lot of times when men say that women are emotionally dominant, they're referring to a chaotic, destructive, out of control emotional state. They're not acknowledging emotional intelligence. So empathy, the ability to have concern for others, the ability to be aware of one's own emotions and manage them, the ability to be aware of other people's emotions and manage them and respond accordingly. This is where those type of characteristics come into play, because you have to stop for a moment and think, yes, I want this oil, but look at all of these things that are going to suffer as a result of me getting this oil. Are all of these lives worth my goal? And how can the loss of those lives affect me in the long run, right? Because I think that's something that is missing. We have this mentality that we're separate from each other. So I don't care what happens to this tribe as long as my tribe is prosperous. But at the end of the day, we are all connected. We all come from the same source. We are all standing on the same soil. So if you go around killing off everything in your vicinity, it may not be today, but at some point, that is going to have a negative impact on you as well. It's kind of like, as a human being, it's kind of like what happens if my immune system was to start attacking my own body, right?
Facts.
But yeah, so I just wanted to say that
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that perspective.
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. And I was saying facts because that's exactly what it is. It's like your cells attacking your own body. That's exactly what's going on with this planet. It's like we're attacking the planet that we have to live in and we have to exist in. So, and the root problem for everything, is patriarchy. If you look at it, if you look at it deep enough, as far as wars and poverty and hunger in certain areas and things like that, genocide, all of that is the root problem of patriarchy, and everything else is the symptom of what patriarchy have given birth to.
Hmm.
So yeah, I believe that we have to go back to an original type of method where everything was harmonious, and that was matriarchy, where we will be able to take care of everybody, take care of the earth, and women are instrumental in that, very very instrumental in that. If we can all get back to the original way of how things were supposed to be in nature. So yeah.
What do you think that women need to do, right? Like as you observe the women that you've encountered, right? What do you think that we need to do or change about ourselves in our current state to move us closer to a harmonious matriarchy?
It's an excellent question. So I feel that women, you talked about emotional intelligence and how that's a power that women have. I believe that all women who do believe in the matriarchal way have to possess that power of emotional intelligence and be able to get with other women who are matriarchs and work together and build, and help each other out. And each woman will probably have her own nation or her own tribe and everything, but if she can reach out to other sister tribes and the sister tribes can all help each other out to grow, I believe that that is the essential thing that women need to do. Because what happens is that because we're so brainwashed within patriarchy, there are women that may believe in the matriarchy or may believe in starting a tribe, but she wants to do it on her own, or she's doing
Mhm.
it by herself, and she's not seeking help or guidance or just cooperation. So, and that's because of the patriarchal brainwash that has happened to men and women. So, so it is essential that women, unbrainwash that particular thinking that society has given us and work together and build together. And once that is worked and built, then the men who in their hearts believe in the matriarchal way, they'll be able to come and they'll be able to assist and play the role of being a provider and a protector and lift everything up. So I wholeheartedly believe that.
I do too. I think that was beautifully said. Me and my sisters, Akasha, Khali, we have founded a order called the Women of Mystical Bloom. It is a circle specifically for nation building matriarchs, right? To come together and be that support for one another and hold each other accountable and push each other towards emotional intelligence and growth and make sure that we all stand on one central understanding, which is that we're in the womb of the Great Mother, right? And from there, we have our own tribes, we have our own cultures, we have our own individual way of doing things, but we meet in the middle at the matriarch, right? And I do think that that is very important to establish before we get to the point of adding men, right? Because if we're going to have a strong matriarchal society, the matriarchs have to be on one page, have to be on one accord, and have to be bonded with each other. Otherwise, it's never going to work, right? So, if y'all are listening, if you are a feminine being, if you are a matriarch who is kind of on her own right now, tap in, DM me, DM Akasha, DM Callie. I'll put their information down there. And, we would love to have you at womb.
Yeah, I agree 1,000,000,000%. And what you and the other goddesses are doing in coming together, it is huge. It is really really huge, and that is what's going to turn the tide and actually shift, the balance between patriarchy into matriarchy. So yeah, I truly truly commend all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. We definitely appreciate your support. There's a lot of masculine um, hateration and holleration against the matriarchy right now. So we definitely appreciate your support. I think I've said everything I need to say. I've asked all my question. Is there anything else you want to say to the people out there?
No, I just wanted to just repeat what you said, that this is the true way of doing things. If a woman is matriarchal and she wants to start her own tribe, the best thing to do is to gather with a sisterhood of other goddesses to be able to cooperate and build together. Because that is what's missing in our community. Because if you notice, when men are trying to build their own tribes and build their own nations, they're debating with each other, they're fighting with each other, they're not coming together. They're not focused
Hmm.
on the common ground. They're always focusing on the differences, and that is what's exactly what's keeping us, separated. And keeping us separated is the reason why we haven't been able to rise up as a people. So coming together as a matriarchal tribes is the key to making sure that everything will be successful. And like you said, I do encourage other goddesses to join the sisterhood as well, the matriarchal sisterhood.
I love that you said that. I feel like that's something I've been noticing within myself, within womb. Like I'm pushing my sisters, like start your own shit now. Like
Mhm.
like I don't care if you do things different than how I do things. I love that. I encourage that. I want you
Yes,
to birth forth a new nation and a new idea besides just my own. And I do think that that's something that's very different about femininity, right? Because I've sat with the Hebrew Israelites, I've sat with the Hoteps, I've sat with the you name it, right? I've
hmm
sat with them. And their energy is very much my idea is correct. And if you're not a part of my nation, then I seek to destroy you because you're saying something that's different than mine, right?
exactly,
And this world isn't big enough for the two of us. And with us here at Womb, with my sisters, our mentality is completely different. This world is absolutely big enough for all of us. That's what it's here for. It's not here just for me and my personal nation, in my personal tribe, right? It's here for all of us, right?
exactly.
So we encourage expansion, we encourage growth, we encourage the birth of new nations, right? But yeah, with that being said, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Anthony.
Thank you,
I'm gonna
goddess. It's
tag
been a
your
pleasure.
information. No problem. And you're always welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah,
All
thank
righty.
you for
Peace.
this discussion. It was really, really great. Thank you.
No problem. Peace, you too. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, share the video. All right. Gotta get the word out here, y'all. Monet.